The Galactic Concord had ruled the stars for 11,000 years. No one remembered a time before its existence. No one wanted to. The Concord was peace. The Concord was order. The Concord was everything. The shield under which 1,200 different species lived. Some had scales, some had feathers. Some consisted of pure light. Some had no bodies at all, existing only as thoughts drifting through the cosmos. But they all agreed on one thing. War was evil. War was something primitive species engaged in before they became wise. War was a disease that civilized beings had cured long ago. Coughs. The great fleets of the Concord were beautiful. Their ships looked like crystals drifting through the darkness. They glowed with soft colors and emitted a gentle hum as they moved. On these ships were meditation rooms and art galleries. They had gardens where rare flowers grew under artificial suns. They had libraries containing the knowledge of 1,000,000 worlds. What they did not have was weapons, at least. Not real weapons. They had small devices capable of disabling a ship's engine. They had tools capable of creating force fields, but real weapons, designed for killing and destruction, had been banned thousands of years ago. No one needed them. The Concord kept everyone safe. Counselor Mortex was a being of great age and even greater wisdom. His body consisted of living crystal, and light passed through him in beautiful patterns when he spoke. He served on the Triplet Council. He had seen disputes between species resolved through careful negotiation. He had seen economic disagreements solved through trade agreements. He had never seen war. He never expected to see it. That changed on the day the Concord would later call the Day of Shadows. The first report came from a small colony on the edge of known space. The colony stopped sending messages. That happened sometimes. Equipment failed, or storms disrupted communication. The Concord sent a repair ship to investigate. The repair ship did not return. They sent another ship. It also disappeared. Finally, they sent a full observation fleet. 50 crystal ships carrying scientists and diplomats. These ships had the best sensors in the galaxy. They could detect a single heartbeat from 1,000 miles away. They could analyze the chemical composition of a planet just by looking at it. What they discovered made no sense. The colony had vanished. Not destroyed, not abandoned, vanished. Buildings still stood, but they were empty shells. The ground was bare rock where forests had once grown. The oceans were empty basins of dead water. Everything living on the planet had disappeared, even the bacteria in the soil. Scientists ran their tests again and again. The results were always the same. Something had come to this world and taken all life. Plants, animals, people, they were all gone. Perhaps they evacuated, one diplomat suggested hopefully. No sign of ships, the lead scientist replied. No evidence of departure. They didn't leave. They were taken. Before anyone could respond, the sensors screamed, warning that something was approaching. Something large. The observation fleet tried to flee. They were fast ships, designed for traversing vast distances quickly. But what emerged from the darkness was faster. The Concord called them the Vadhkri, a word meaning walking hunger in one of the oldest languages. But the Vadhkri had no names for themselves. Names were for beings who thought. The Vadhkri didn't think. They only consumed. Their ships weren't built. They grew. Massive creatures of flesh, bone, and hatred, larger than moons, covered in eyes that saw in spectra no other species could imagine. They moved through the cosmos like sharks through water, silent and inevitable. The observation fleet lasted 4 minutes. The Council received one final transmission before the screams stopped. They are eating us. The ships. They are eating the ships whole. Send help. Send anyone. Send then silence. Mortex called an emergency meeting of the Council. Representatives of all 1,200 species gathered in the Great Hall. The room was so vast, it had its own weather system. Clouds drifted between the columns supporting the ceiling. Light filtered in from windows showing different skies from different worlds. We face a threat, Mortex announced. His crystalline body pulsed with anxious colors. A threat unlike anything in our recorded history. Representatives whispered among themselves. Threats were solved by diplomacy. Everyone knew this, stated the representative of the Ishan, a creature resembling a floating jellyfish made of silver threads. We will send ambassadors, we will negotiate. We will find common ground. We tried, Mortex said. We sent a diplomatic vessel with our best negotiators. The Vadhkri didn't respond to a single attempt at communication. They simply consumed the ship and everyone on board. Silence descended on the hall. Consumed. The word hung in the air like poison. Then we will blockade them. suggested the representative of the Kotha, a massive creature with 4 arms and skin like tree bark. We will surround them and prevent them from spreading. With what ships? Mortex asked. Our fleets are not designed for combat. They have no weapons. The Vadhkri tore through our observation fleet as if it were made of paper. Again, silence. Representatives looked at each other with growing fear. For the first time in 11,000 years, they faced a problem that could not be solved with words. The following months were dark for the Concord. The Vadhkri spread through the outer systems like a plague. World after world fell silent. The pattern was always the same. First communications ceased, then reconnaissance ships vanished, then nothing remained but empty rocks drifting in space. The Concord built new ships. They pulled old weapon blueprints from archives that hadn't been opened for millennia. They trained crews in combat tactics that no one had used for generations. It wasn't enough. The Vadhkri weren't just hungry, they were cunning. Their bioships adapted to every weapon the Concord designed. Energy beams that worked once were useless the next time. Missiles that destroyed one target were harmlessly absorbed by the next. The Concord fought an enemy that learned and evolved faster than they could invent. Worse, the Vadhkri had their own weapon. Their bioships could scream through the void of space, and that scream carried something terrible. Beings who heard it went mad. They saw things that weren't there. They felt fears with no name. Entire crews turned on each other, tearing themselves apart while the Vadhkri watched, waited, and then began the feast. Within a year, the Concord lost 100 worlds. Within 2 years, 500. The great fleets that once patrolled the stars in peace were scattered. Debris drifted through the darkness. High Counselor Mortex stopped sleeping. He stopped eating. He spent every hour in the command center, watching the map of known space grow dark as more systems fell. He watched the end of everything he had ever known and had not the slightist idea how to stop it. Then, the representative of the Ishan came to him with a proposal that made his crystalline blood run cold. Humans, the Ishan said. We must ask for the humans. Mortex turned slowly. His light flickered with emotions he could not name. Humans are in quarantine. They have been in quarantine for 300 years. You know why. I know why, the Ishan agreed. But I also know what they are, what they can do. We have watched them, Mortex. For centuries we have watched them. That is exactly why we placed them in quarantine. Humans. Even the word seemed dangerous. The Concord had discovered humanity 300 years ago when this primitive species was just beginning to reach beyond its home world. The Council had sent observers to study them, expecting to find the standard pattern, a young species learning peace, growing wise, preparing to join galactic society. They discovered something entirely different. Humans had spent their entire existence at war. Not a war like the occasional border disputes other species experienced before they matured, a real war. A constant war, war as a way of life. They fought each other for land, for resources, for ideas, for gods. They developed weapons with terrifying ingenuity. When one weapon failed, they built a better one. When their enemies adapted, they adapted faster. But it wasn't just their talent for violence that frightened the Council, it was their talent for enjoying it. They created art about war. They sang songs about it. Their children played games pretending to fight and kill. Violence was woven into every part of their culture, and they showed no signs of outgrowing it. The Council reached a decision. Humanity was too dangerous to be integrated into galactic society. They were also too young to be destroyed. The Concord did not believe in genocide, so they chose the middle path, containment. An energy field was placed around Earth's solar system. Humans couldn't pass through it. More importantly, they couldn't detect it. From their perspective, space simply ended at a certain point. Their probes vanished. Their ships went missing. Eventually, they stopped trying to go beyond their immediate surroundings, believing the universe was smaller than it actually was. The Council told themselves they were protecting humanity, giving them time to mature. But everyone knew the truth. They were protecting themselves from humanity. They have been locked in that system for 300 years, Mortex said, alone, without contact. What do you think they have turned into in that time? That is exactly what I mean, the Ishan replied. They were alone, contained, focused, and they are a species that never stops creating weapons, never stops preparing for war. If anyone can fight the Vadhkri, it is them. And if they decide to fight us, the silver threads of the Ishan rippled as if in a shrug. Then we will die fighting humans, not the Vadhkri. At least it will be quick. The debates in the council lasted for weeks. Some argued that releasing humans was madness. Others argued that inaction was even worse. The Vadhkri were approaching. They were not slowing down. They were not negotiating. Every day brought them closer to the central worlds, the heart of the Concord, the center of everything. Finally, fear won. The council voted to contact humanity. Ambassador Velfaris was chosen for the mission. She was a being of pure light, ancient and wise, respected by all species. She had negotiated treaties that ended centuries-old conflicts. She had mediated peace between enemies who had hated each other for generations. If anyone could handle the humans, it was she. The containment field around the Earth system was lowered just enough to let one ship through. Velfaris traveled alone. She wanted no escort, no protection. She would meet the humans as an equal, with respect and openness. She expected to find primitive humans on simple ships. She expected gratitude for the attention of a superior species. She expected to explain the situation and receive modest offers of help. She was very, very wrong. When her ship entered the solar system, she was immediately surrounded. Massive silhouettes emerged from the darkness between the planets. Ships unlike anything ever built by the Concord. They were ugly, black, and angular, covered in weapons her sensors couldn't identify, and crewed by beings who showed no fear. A voice came over her communication system. It spoke in perfect galactic standard, the common language of the Concord. But it spoke with an accent she didn't recognize, cold and hard, like the grinding of metal against metal. Unknown vessel, you have entered the space of the United Earth Fleet. Identify yourself and state your purpose. Velfaris collected herself. She had dealt with aggressive species before. She knew how to project calm and authority. I am Ambassador Velfaris of the Galactic Concord. I come in peace to speak with your leaders regarding a very important matter. After a long pause, the voice returned, and this time it had something in it that made her light flicker anxiously. Amusement. A human was amused by something. Galactic Concord. Yes, we know who you are. We have been waiting for you. Waiting for me? Please follow the provided coordinates. Admiral Chen Weilan will meet you aboard the OEF Defiance. The coordinates led to a ship beside which Velfaris's vessel looked like a toy. Defiance was massive, larger than many space stations, bristling with weapons her sensors couldn't even properly analyze. As she approached, she saw symbols painted on its hull. A blue world surrounded by stars and words in the human language that her translator rendered as Earth's shield. She docked and was escorted through corridors of gray metal by humans in identical uniforms. They walked with a purpose she had rarely seen. Their eyes were alert, constantly scanning for threats. Their bodies were ready for violence at any moment. Even here, in the safety of their own ship, they acted like soldiers in enemy territory. Admiral Chen Weilan waited in a room filled with screens and maps. She was short by human standards, with gray hair pulled back from a wrinkled face. But her eyes were sharp, and she smiled when Velfaris entered, but there was not a drop of warmth in that smile. Ambassador, the Admiral said, welcome to our space. Please sit. Velfaris lowered herself into a chair clearly not designed for beings of light. She began her prepared speech. Admiral, I have come to you during a time of great crisis. The Galactic Concord faces a threat that— Vadhkri, Admiral Chen interrupted. Velfaris stopped. You know, we have been tracking the Concord's transmissions for 300 years. Admiral Chen tapped her tablet, and suddenly the screens around them filled with images. Battles, destroyed worlds, the spreading darkness of Vadhkri territory. We know everything. The invasion, the defeat, the Council's decision to contact us as a last resort. How is this possible? The containment field leaked? Your technology is impressive, Ambassador, but it is not perfect. We intercepted fragments of your transmissions. Admiral Chen stood and walked to the window, from which the stars were visible. For 300 years, we were locked in a cage. We were told we weren't ready, that we were too primitive, too violent, too dangerous. And perhaps you were right. We are violent, we are dangerous, but we are also patient. She turned to Velfaris, and her smile widened. We knew that one day the cage would open. We didn't know why, but we knew it would happen. So we prepared. We built ships, we developed weapons, we trained soldiers. And now you are here, asking for help because everything you built in 11,000 years cannot stop the creatures we would have fought from the first day we went into space if you had let us. Velfaris tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She had prepared for many possibilities. She hadn't prepared for this. Do you want humanity's help? Admiral Chen asked. You will get it, but understand this. We will not be your servants. We will not follow your rules. We will fight this war our way with our weapons, our tactics, and our people. And when it ends, she leaned forward, and the light in her eyes was something Velfaris had never seen before. Something ancient, something hungry. When it ends, we will talk about the cages. We will talk about 300 years of imprisonment. We will talk about everything the Concord decided we were too dangerous to know. Velfaris wanted to object, wanted to explain, wanted to justify the Council's decision. But looking at the Admiral, at the ships outside the window, at the maps of prepared battle plans on the screens around her, she realized something terrible. The Council was right to fear humanity. They just didn't fear them enough. The news spread through the Concord like fire through dry grass. Humanity was coming. After 300 years of silence, the contained species had finally been released. Reactions varied. Some species felt hope. Perhaps these strange, violent beings could do what the Concord couldn't. Perhaps they could stop the Vadhkri. Perhaps they could save everyone. Others felt fear. They remembered why humanity had been quarantined in the first place. They had seen records of human history, wars, weapons, an endless capacity for destruction. Inviting humans to fight the Vadhkri might be like calling a hurricane to stop a flood. The immediate problem might be solved, but what came after could be even worse. Fleet Commander Yao Tin belonged to the second group. He was a tall being with blue skin and 3 eyes, born on a world of endless oceans. His people had abandoned violence so long ago that they no longer had words for most types of weapons. The idea of intentional killing was almost impossible for them to understand. He had been tasked with observing the human fleet as it exited the quarantine zone. His ship, Yao Tin thought, was at a safe distance with orders to observe and report. The Council wanted to know exactly what humanity had built over centuries of isolation. Yao Tin expected to see something primitive. Humans were young. They were cut off from galactic technology. Surely their ships would be crude, their weapons simple, and their numbers small. The containment field lowered exactly at the appointed time. For a moment, nothing happened. Space remained empty and dark. Then the stars began to move. What am I seeing? Yao Tin asked, looking at his sensors. His assistant, a young officer named Kat, double-checked the readings. Before answering, his voice trembled. Ships, Commander, human ships. How many? Kat swallowed hard. The sensors can't count them all. They passed through the breach like a river of steel. Warships of all sizes poured out of the quarantine zone in such precise formations that they seemed choreographed. Small ships moved in swarms around larger vessels. Medium ships held formation with mathematical perfection, and behind them, drifting slowly like mountains rising from the sea, came the dreadnoughts. Yao Tin had seen the largest ships of the Concord. He considered them impressive, but the human dreadnoughts made those vessels look like toys. Each one was a mile long, bristling with weapons his sensors couldn't identify. Painted in black and gray, they were almost invisible against the backdrop of the darkness of space. Ancestors preserve us, Kat whispered. What were they doing in there? Yao Tin couldn't answer. He was too busy counting. His sensors finally caught up with the numbers, and what they showed was impossible. 700 warships, not counting the small auxiliary vessels, not counting the transport ships, not counting the specialized apparatus whose purpose he couldn't guess. 700 warships, each one designed from the ground up for one single purpose: destruction. The entire fleet of the Concord, assembled from 1,000 worlds, numbered perhaps 200 combat-capable vessels. Most of them were converted trade ships with hastily added weapons. Not one of them was truly built for war. Humanity had built 700 warships while locked in a cage, cut off from the galaxy, using only their own resources and their determination. Yao Tin suspected these were only the ships they were willing to show. A request for communication arrived. Yao Tin accepted it with trembling hands. Admiral Chen Weiland's face appeared on his screen. She looked exactly as the reports described. Short, gray-haired, with eyes that missed nothing. Fleet Commander Yao Tin, she said. Thank you for coming to meet us. I hope our fleet does not alarm you. Yao Tin tried to find the words. Admiral, the size of your force, we did not expect. We have been preparing for a long time, Commander, and now we are ready to help. I assume the Council has received our proposed battle plans. Yes, they are under review. The Admiral's smile didn't reach her eyes. Good. We are moving to the Kessler system in 6 hours. The main forces of the Vadhkri are gathering there. We intend to destroy them. 6 hours? But the Council has not approved. Commander. The Admiral's voice was patient but firm. The Concord asked for our help. We are providing it. We will destroy the Vadhkri wherever we find them, using whatever methods we choose. The Council can approve or disapprove as it wishes. It will not change our actions. The transmission ended. Yautin sat in his chair for a long time, trying to make sense of what he had seen and heard. Commander, Kat asked, what should we do? We will follow them, Yautin said quietly. We will watch and pray to our ancestors that we never give them a reason to turn those ships on us. The human fleet moved through the space of the Concord like nothing Yautin had ever seen. They didn't drift lazily between stars like Concord ships. They didn't stop to admire the beauty of nebulae or explore interesting phenomena. They moved with purpose, always forward, always toward the enemy. During their journey, Yautin learned more about human ships than he ever wanted to know. His sensors constantly analyzed everything they could detect. What they found was terrifying. Human ships had no gardens, no meditation rooms, no art galleries. Every inch of space was devoted to war. Their hulls were covered in armor so thick that Yautin's weapons would barely scratch the surface. Their engines burned fuel at a rate that would bankrupt most species, and all of it for speed and maneuverability. And the weapons? Oh, the weapons. Railguns accelerating metal slugs to near-light speeds. Missiles in uncountable quantities, each carrying warheads of terrifying variety. Energy weapons that operated on frequencies the Concord had never explored. Point defense systems so dense that approaching them would be equivalent to flying into a wall of fire. But most of all, Yautin was troubled by the small ships. Each large vessel carried dozens of them, tiny craft barely large enough for one pilot. The Concord had abandoned primitive combat machines thousands of years ago. The casualty rates were unacceptable. Automated drones could do the same work without risking lives. Humans, apparently, did not agree. They filled these tiny ships with their own people, sent them into battle, knowing many would die, and called it acceptable. Why do they do it? Kat asked one evening. Why risk their people when machines could fight in their place? Yautin had been wondering the same thing. He had found the answer in the human records they had shared, but he wasn't sure if Kat would understand. Humans believe in the value of personal sacrifice, he said slowly. They believe that sending a machine into battle shows less commitment than sending oneself. It's a matter of honor, I think. Though I'm not sure that word means the same for them as it does for us. That is madness. Perhaps, but look at their fleet, Kat. Look at what they built. Whether it is madness or not, they are effective. The Kessler system appeared on their sensors 3 days later. It had once been home to 3 inhabited worlds, each beautiful in its own way. Now it was a graveyard. The Vadhkri had stripped it bare, leaving only naked rocks and empty space, but they hadn't left. A large Vadhkri force had gathered there, perhaps waiting for reinforcements, perhaps preparing for the next wave of attacks. Dozens of bioships hovered in the darkness. Their massive forms pulsed with alien life. Yautin expected the humans to slow down, to observe, to plan. Instead, they accelerated. All ships, assume battle stations! Admiral Chen's voice echoed from every speaker in the fleet. The first wave will consist of the 3rd and 5th battle groups. Carrier wings launch in 10 minutes. Remember your training. Remember your goal. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. The Vadhkri noticed the approaching fleet. Their bioships began to move, falling into the formation they had used to destroy hundreds of Concord fleets. They were confident. They had never lost a battle. They saw no reason why today should be different. They were wrong. The human ships opened fire at distances the Vadhkri had never encountered. Railgun slugs crossed the distance between the fleets in moments, striking the nearest bioships with the force of small moons. Holes the size of cities opened in the alien flesh. Screams echoed across frequencies that shouldn't have transmitted sound. The Vadhkri responded with their weapons. Beams of psionic energy surged toward the human fleet, the same weapon that drove Concord crews to madness from fear. And then something strange happened. The beams struck the human ships and nothing. No madness, no crew members tearing each other apart. Humans had somehow shielded their minds from the Vadhkri's greatest weapon. And then the missiles flew. Yautin had seen missile attacks before. The Concord used them from time to time. Small, surgical strikes on specific targets. Humans didn't believe in surgical strikes. They believed in overwhelming force. Thousands of missiles erupted from the human fleet. Not hundreds, thousands. They filled the cosmos like a swarm of angry insects. Each one carried death in a dozen different forms. Some were explosive, some nuclear. Some carried substances that Jotun's sensors couldn't identify, but which made the Vadhkri bioships scream in agony upon impact. The battle lasted 19 hours. Jotun watched every moment of it, recording everything for the council. He saw things that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. He saw human fighters dive into the clouds of Vadhkri defenders, destroying enemies 3 times their size through sheer skill and courage. He saw human ships intentionally ramming damaged bioships. Their crews died to ensure their enemies would die with them. He saw the Vadhkri retreat for the first time in 4 billion years. Their remaining ships fled into the darkness while human vessels hunted them down one by one. When it was over, the Kessler system was littered with the corpses of Vadhkri bioships. Not one had escaped. The human fleet had lost 43 ships and over 12,000 lives. But they had won completely, absolutely, without question. Admiral Chen's voice echoed through the comm channel, broadcasting on all frequencies so the whole galaxy could hear. This is Admiral Chen Weilan of the United Earth Fleet. The Vadhkri forces in the Kessler system are destroyed. We are moving to the next target. Any Concord vessels in the area may observe, but stay out of our path. The line holds. Send more. Jotun sat in silence as his ship drifted among the debris. Around him, the human fleet was already reorganizing, already preparing to move, already hunting for the next battle. They didn't stop to mourn their dead. They didn't pause to celebrate their victory. They simply moved on to the next fight. "Commander," Kat said quietly, "I think I understand now why the council feared them." Jotun nodded slowly. "Yes, but I think the council was afraid of the wrong thing." "What do you mean?" "They were afraid humans would conquer us, enslave us, use their violence against us." Jotun watched as a human carrier accepted its surviving fighters, already preparing them for the next battle. "But I don't see that. I see a species that has found something worthy of their violence, something that deserves to be destroyed." He turned to look at Kat, and his 3 eyes were filled with an emotion he had never experienced before. It took him a moment to recognize it as hope. "I think the council's mistake wasn't keeping them locked away. The mistake was not releasing them sooner. If humans had been free 3 years ago, the Vadhkri might never have become a threat at all." The human fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, disappearing from the system in pursuit of their enemy. Behind them, they left a message written in the corpses of monsters. "Humanity has arrived, and the galaxy will never be the same." On 1,000 worlds, beings who had never known hope began to feel that something was changing. The darkness was not unstoppable. The Vadhkri could be defeated. Someone had finally stood up and said, "Enough." That someone was humanity, and they were only just getting started. In her office aboard the Defiance, Admiral Chen reviewed the battle reports. The losses were acceptable. The tactics had worked. The enemy had shown weaknesses that could be exploited. She allowed herself a slight smile. 300 years of preparation, 300 years of waiting, building, training, 300 years locked in a cage while the galaxy ignored them and feared them in equal measure. Now the cage was open. Now humanity had a purpose. And Chen knew with absolute certainty that they would not stop until the Vadhkri were merely a memory. She pressed a button on her desk, opening a comm channel with the fleet. "All teams, this is Admiral Chen. Excellent work today. But the war is only beginning. We have identified 17 more Vadhkri positions in the distant systems. Our mission is clear. Find them, fight them, destroy them. No mercy, no retreat, no surrender." She paused, looking out the window at the stars, where somewhere out there the Vadhkri were learning what fear was for the first time in 4 billion years. "Humanity has entered the war," she said quietly, "and we will finish it." The fleet jumped into hyperspace, leaving the Kessler graveyard behind. Ahead of them lay new battles, new deaths, new sacrifices, but ahead of them also lay victory. They could feel it. They were born for this, trained for this, had waited for this throughout their existence as a species. The galaxy had spent 300 years fearing what humanity might become. Now they would learn what humanity had always been. Admiral James Aconell had been a soldier for 37 years. He had served on ships ranging from the smallest patrol vessels to the largest dreadnoughts. He had trained for combat his entire adult life, studying battles that happened before his birth and planning battles that might never happen. And now, he finally had his war. He stood on the bridge of the UEF Thermopylae, flagship of the 3rd Battle Group. Around him, the crew moved with calm efficiency, checking systems and tracking sensors. These were good people, trained, ready. Some of them would die today. Akanel accepted this as he accepted the stars and the darkness. It was simply part of the universe. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, a Vadhkri fleet detected on the edge of the system. Approximately 170 bioships, including 3 high vessels. Akanel nodded. High vessels were the largest ships of the Vadhkri, massive creatures that served as mobile command centers for their mindless fleets. Destroying them would disrupt the enemy's coordination. Of course, they were also the most heavily protected targets in the system. "How many ships do we have?" he asked. 63 warships, sir, plus carrier wings and auxiliary ships. The numbers were bad. The Vadhkri outnumbered them nearly 3-1. In any ordinary battle, that would be a reason to retreat. The Concord had long ago established that engaging with superior forces was foolish. Akanel smiled. Then it's a fair fight. All ships, assume battle stations, prepare for engagement. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Some might call it anxiety, others might call it anticipation. After decades of training for a war that never came, they finally faced a real enemy. No simulations, no drills. Real combat against real monsters. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, his executive officer, approached him. "Sir, the Concord observers are requesting permission to withdraw to a safe distance." Denied. "They want to see how humans fight. Let them watch from where they are." He turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel to the fleet." "Channel open, sir." Akanel took a deep breath. He had been preparing for this moment his entire life. Every speech, every inspiration, every word led to this. All ships. This is Admiral Akanel. Today, we face an enemy that has never known defeat. For 4 billion years, they have consumed and destroyed without resistance. They believe they are unstoppable. They believe the universe belongs to them. He paused, letting the words take root. "We are going to show them how wrong they are. Our mission is simple. Hold this system. Do not let them pass. Behind us are 3 inhabited worlds that have not yet been evacuated. Millions of innocent beings are counting on us to protect them. We will not fail them. The Vadhkri do not understand who we are. They see us as just another species to consume. They don't know that humanity was born in fire. They don't know that we fought, died, and survived even before their ancestors crawled out of whatever pit created them. They think we are prey." His voice hardened. "Show them what predators look like. All ships, advance." The third battle group moved forward as one. X-63 ships, positioned in a formation that maximized their overlapping fire zones. Smaller vessels held close to larger ones, using their point defense systems to create a protective web. The carriers held back, preparing to launch their fighters at the optimal moment. The Vadhkri saw them approaching. Their bioships began to reposition, assuming the familiar attack formation that had destroyed so many Concord fleets. The 3 high vessels moved into the center of the formation, protected by layers of smaller ships. "They aren't running," Kim noted. "They still think they can win," Akanel replied. "Overconfidence is a gift. All ships, execute Delta pattern on my command. Carriers, hold fighters until we break their formation." Delta pattern confirmed. Sarah. The 2 fleets closed to extreme range. The Vadhkri opened fire with their psionic weapons. Waves of mental energy crashed against the human ships, the same attack that drove Concord crews to madness. The humans felt it. They couldn't ignore it completely, but they had prepared for it. Every human ship was equipped with psionic dampers technology they had secretly developed after studying captured Concord records. The attack was painful, but it didn't incapacitate. The crews gritted their teeth and kept fighting. "Interesting," transmitted the Concord observer. "How did you develop countermeasures so quickly?" "We didn't develop them quickly," Akanel replied without taking his eyes off the battle display. "We developed them 300 years ago based on your own research. You just never thought to use them because you never expected you would need them." The fleet entered weapon range. Akanel raised his hand. "All ships on my command. Fire." The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Railguns sent tungsten slugs hurtling through space at near-light speeds. Thousands of missiles erupted from launchers. Energy weapons painted the darkness with murderous light. The Vadhkri formation shattered. Ships that had never known damage found themselves torn apart by forces they couldn't understand. Their adaptive armor, which stopped every Concord weapon, couldn't cope with the vast variety of human attacks. Each weapon used different principles. Each missile carried a different payload. By the time the bioships adapted to one threat, 3 more were already killing them. "Launch fighters, Each was prepared to die for this victory. The Concord considered this madness. Humans knew it was courage. The fighters dove into the Vadhkri formation like wolves among sheep. They were too small and fast for the bioship's primary weapons. They aimed for weak spots, clusters of engines, sensory organs, gaps between armor plates. Where they hit hard. Pilot Maya Chen flew her fighter through a storm of organic debris. Her targeting computer highlighted the enemy's weak spots in red, and she hit every one. 3 kills, 5, 7. Her squadron paved a path through the Vadhkri defenses toward the high vessels. "Squadron Bravo, follow me," she called out. "We're going for the big ones." "Copy that, Bravo leader. What's the plan?" Maya grinned behind her visor. "Get close. Shoot the soft spots. Don't die. Simple. I like it." The squadron dove toward the nearest high vessel. It was massive, larger than some moons, covered in eyes, weapons, and things Maya couldn't identify. Its defenses were formidable. 2 of her pilots were shot down before they even got close. But Maya was the best pilot in the 3rd battle group. She had earned that rank through 10,000 hours of simulations and training. Now she proved those weren't just numbers on a report. She flew her fighter through gaps that should have been impossible, dodging fire by instinct rather than calculation. Her shots hit critical systems with perfect accuracy. When her missiles ran out, she used her cannons. When her cannons overheated, she used her ship itself, crashing into a sensory cluster and tearing it apart with her hull before flying away at the last second. The high vessel shuddered. Warning lights flashed across its surface. Somehow, a tiny human had done what massive warships couldn't. She had wounded it. "Good hit, Bravo leader," her wingman shouted. "The high vessel is losing coordination. The smaller ships are confused. Then keep pushing. All units, focus fire on the high vessels. Destroy them, and the rest will fall apart." Back on the Thermopylae, Admiral Akanel watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. His pilots were doing exactly what they had been trained for. His ships held formation, and the Vadhkri died in numbers they had never experienced. But it wasn't enough. "Not yet." "Sir," Kim reported, "the remaining 2 high vessels are attempting to retreat. If they escape, they'll warn the rest of the Vadhkri about our capabilities. Then we won't let them escape. Helm, plot an intercept course. Maximum speed." "Sir, that will take us deep into the enemy formation." "I know, do it anyway." The Thermopylae surged forward, leaving the relative safety of the fleet formation. Other ships followed them. The captains made the same calculation as their admiral. Some things were more important than survival. The remaining Vadhkri ships turned to meet this new threat. They focused their fire on the Thermopylae, raining everything they had onto its shields. The ship shook from the assault. Sirens began to sound. Damage reports flooded in. "Shields at 40%, Kim reported. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Casualties are rising." "Keep firing," Akanel commanded. "Every second we hold their attention is a second our fighters have to finish off the high vessels." The battle turned into a desperate race. The Thermopylae and its escort exchanged fire with the Vadhkri at point-blank range. Each side tried to destroy the other before being destroyed themselves. Human ships exploded into fireballs. Vadhkri bioships tore apart and died with screams. Maya Chen led her remaining fighters in a final attack on the second high vessel. Her ship was damaged, leaking atmosphere, barely holding together. Half her squadron was dead, but the high vessel was right there. Its defenses were weakened. Its hull was exposed. "Squadron Bravo," she transmitted. "Final run. Make it count." They dove together. 7 fighters against a monster the size of a mountain. The high vessel's remaining weapons reached for them, destroying 2 more pilots in seconds, but the survivors kept going. Maya's targeting computer locked onto the high vessel's central mass. She saw vital organs beneath the surface, the things keeping the creature alive. One good shot would end it. She pulled the trigger. Her remaining missiles rushed toward the target. Behind her, her surviving squad members added their fire. The combined attack struck the high vessel in its most vulnerable spot. The creature shuddered, cracked, and then slowly began to fall apart. "High Vessel 2 is destroyed!" someone screamed over the comm, repeating, "High Vessel 2 is destroyed!" The Vadhkri formation collapsed. Without the high vessels coordinating them, the remaining bioships fell into confusion, attacking at random and scattering in all directions. The human fleet hunted them down one by one. Admiral Akanel slumped into his chair as the last enemy ship was destroyed. The battle was over. They had won, but the price was terrible. "Damage report," he said quietly. Kim brought up the numbers. Her voice was firm, but her eyes were not. 43 ships destroyed, 12,400 confirmed dead, unknown number of wounded. The Thermopylae itself sustained heavy damage, but remains in action. Akonel nodded slowly. 12,400 lives. Friends, colleagues, people who had trusted him to lead them into battle, were gone. But behind them, millions of innocent beings on 3 worlds would live another day. They now had time to evacuate. Time to be saved. 12,400 lives had bought that time. Open a channel, he said. All frequencies. Channel open, sir. Akonel stood. His uniform was scorched. His face was stained with sweat and smoke. But his voice was strong. This is Admiral James Akonel of the United Earth Fleet, 3rd Battle Group. The Vadhkri forces in this system are destroyed. 170 enemy vessels confirmed destroyed. No survivors. He paused, letting that realization spread across the galaxy. No survivors. The Vadhkri had never faced a complete defeat until today. To the Concord, the line holds. Your people are safe. Begin evacuation of the civilian population immediately. To all Vadhkri who can hear this is what happens when you threaten beings under humanity's protection. We will find you, we will fight you, and we will destroy you. There will be no negotiations, no mercy. There will be only your complete and total extinction. To humanity. Today we proved what we always knew. We are not victims, we are not prey, we are warriors. And the galaxy will remember this day forever. He took a breath. Akonel, out. The transmission ended. Across the Concord, beings of every species heard this message and felt something change within them. For the first time since the Vadhkri appeared, they felt hope. On the bridge of the Thermopylae, the crew was silent. They were exhausted, wounded, mourning their dead, but they were also proud. They had done what no one else could. They had stood against the darkness and refused to fall. Kim approached the Admiral. Sir, orders? Akonel looked at the tactical display. The system was clear. The enemy was dead, but out there, somewhere, more Vadhkri were waiting. Find the next battle, he said, and take us there. The 3rd Battle Group began repairs, collected their wounded, and prepared to fight again. Behind them, they left a graveyard of alien monsters. Ahead of them lay new wars, new deaths, new sacrifices. They moved forward without hesitation. That is what they were built for. This was what humanity had always waited for. A chance to show the universe that some species do not break. Xenopsychologist Tron had studied alien minds for 400 years. Her species, the Volinari, was perfectly suited for this work. They had 17 eyes, each capable of reading different types of emotional information. They could see fear in how a creature stood. They could detect aggression in the character of someone's breathing. They could understand an entire species just by observing its existence. She thought she understood humans. She had studied their history, their culture, their wars. She had written papers on their unusual psychology, their capacity for both great kindness and terrible violence. She considered herself an expert. Then she actually met them. The Council assigned her to the human flagship Defiance as an observer. Her job was to study how humans fought, understand their methods, and report anything that might be useful. It was supposed to be a simple academic assignment. Nothing about it was simple. Her first shock came when she boarded the ship. Concord vessels were calm, quiet places. Soft light, gentle sounds, spaces designed to promote peace and meditation. Defiance was the exact opposite. It hummed with energy. Crew members moved through the corridors at a brisk pace, always heading somewhere, always doing something. The light was harsh, the sounds were loud, the whole ship felt like a weapon waiting to be fired. Her second shock came when she attended a briefing. Admiral Chen stood at the front of the room, surrounded by holographic displays showing enemy positions. Her officers sat in rows before her, taking notes, asking questions, planning how to kill. The Vadhkri have established a presence in the Karat cluster, Chen explained. Intelligence suggests they are building some sort of reproductive facility there. If we allow them to finish it, they will be able to produce new bioships faster than we can destroy them. What is the plan, Admiral? Asked a young captain with scars on his face. We will hit them hard and fast. The 4th and 7th fleets will distract their main forces from the cluster. Once they are engaged in combat, the 1st fleet will flank them and destroy the reproductive facility. What about casualties? Admiral Chen's expression did not change. Expected losses are about 15%. Command has approved this as acceptable. 15%. Tron quickly calculated. The First Fleet had over 100 ships. 15% meant 15 ships, thousands of lives, and humans called this acceptable. She raised a hand before she could stop herself. Admiral Chen, I have a question. Chen looked at her with her cold, evaluating eyes. Continue, observer. You speak of losing 15% of your forces as if it's nothing. You do not grieve, you do not feel the loss of so many lives. The room went quiet. Human officers exchanged looks that Tron couldn't read. Admiral Chen's voice was soft when she answered. Of course we feel it. Every death causes pain. Every name on the casualty list. Someone's child, someone's friend, someone's loved one. She paused. But we also know there are things worth dying for. These reproductive facilities will kill millions of innocents. If we allow them to survive, our people will die so that others can live. There is no greater honor. Tron wanted to argue. Her species had abandoned violence so long ago that the very idea of dying for a cause was foreign to her. But looking at the faces around her, she saw no doubt, no fear, only determination. Do you truly believe that? She said. We know it, Chen replied. It is who we are. Now, if there are no more questions, let us discuss the tactical details. The meeting continued. Tron watched and listened. Her 17 eyes recorded everything. She was beginning to understand something about humans that her papers had never reflected. They weren't cruel because they enjoyed it. They weren't aggressive because they couldn't control themselves. They had simply come to terms with a truth that other species couldn't accept. Sometimes violence was necessary. Sometimes death was the only answer. And when that time came, humans didn't hesitate. She saw this truth manifest in subsequent battles. The 4th and 7th Fleets engaged the main forces of the Vadhkri exactly as planned. It was a brutal fight that lasted 3 days, and neither side was willing to give in. Humans lost ships. They lost people, but they held the enemy in place until the First Fleet maneuvered into position. When the First Fleet struck the reproductive facility, Tron was on an auxiliary ship, watching the battle unfold. What she saw forever changed her understanding of war. Human Marines landed directly on the object. Thousands of soldiers in armored suits, carrying weapons of all kinds, storming the heart of the enemy territory. The Vadhkri defenders greatly outnumbered them. The fight was desperate. Close-quarters combat in twisting corridors filled with alien horrors. Humans didn't slow down. They didn't retreat. They fought their way through everything the Vadhkri threw at them, killing and dying in equal measure, never stopping until they reached their goal. Tron watched through a remote camera as a squad of Marines encountered a Vadhkri Guardian, a massive creature created solely for killing. It was 3 times the size of the largest human, covered in natural armor, equipped with blades and teeth capable of cutting through steel. The squad leader, a woman named Sergeant Major Torres, didn't hesitate. She ordered her squad to scatter and engage the creature herself, diverting its attention while her people flanked it. The Guardian struck her with one of its blades, slicing deeply into her side. She fell, bleeding heavily, but didn't die. Instead, she grabbed a grenade from her belt, pulled the pin, and shoved it into the creature's wound before it could finish her. The explosion killed the Guardian and heavily wounded Torres. Her squad finished clearing the room. One of them ran to help her, providing medical aid while the others provided cover. Sergeant Major, the medic said, you need to get to the evacuation point. It's serious. Torres shook her head. She was pale, sweating, clearly in extreme pain, but her voice was firm. Not until the mission is complete. Keep moving. She rose on shaky legs and led her squad forward. They reached the core of the reproductive facility 20 minutes later. Torres was barely conscious by then, supported by 2 of her soldiers. But she was there when they laid the charges. She was there when they were detonated. She was there when the reproductive facility perished. Tron watched all this with growing disbelief. Her species would never have done such a thing. They couldn't imagine how one could push through such pain, such injury, such certainty of death. They would have retreated, regrouped, found another path. Humans, it seemed, didn't understand the concept of another path. Later, she interviewed Torres in the ship's medical bay. The sergeant major was recovering. Her wounds had been sealed and stitched, but she would carry the scar for the rest of her life. May I ask something? Tron said. Sure. Torres's voice was tired but calm. When you attacked that Guardian, you must have known you might die. Why didn't you run? Why didn't you let your soldiers handle it while you commanded from a safe place? Torres laughed. It wasn't a mocking laugh, but genuine amusement. You really don't understand us, do you? I am trying to understand. All right. Torres shifted on the bed, wincing at the movement. Here's the thing about humans. We don't ask our people to do things we wouldn't do ourselves. Officers lead from the front lines. Sergeants stand beside their soldiers. We all take the same risks, face the same dangers, die the same deaths. That's how we earn respect. That's how we build trust. But your experience is more valuable than mine. Means nothing if my people don't believe in me. If I hid in the back while they fought and died, they would never follow me into battle again. And they shouldn't. A leader who doesn't risk their own life has no right to ask others to risk theirs. Tron contemplated this. It was logic alien to her, but she saw the truth in it. The human soldiers she had observed were fiercely loyal to their commanders, willing to follow them into impossible situations. Perhaps this is why there is something else I don't understand, she said. During the battle, I heard your troops playing music. Strange, loud music with aggressive rhythms. Why? Torres grinned. You mean metal? That's just how we howl. Music helps us focus, keeps our energy up. Plus, it scares the hell out of the enemy. The Vadhkri don't know what to do with that. It scared them. It scared them? Torres's smile widened. They're used to enemies that go silent when they're scared. Enemies that run. We come at them screaming, with music blaring and laughing during the fight. It drives them crazy. They don't know how to perceive predators that enjoy hunting them. Tron noted this. She had seen the records. Human soldiers didn't just fight. They fought with something that almost looked like joy. They joked during battles. They celebrated killing. They turned the horror of combat into something that almost looked like a game. Do you enjoy killing? She asked quietly. Torres's expression turned serious. No, no one in their right mind enjoys killing. But we enjoy winning. We enjoy protecting our people. We enjoy proving that we're stronger than anything trying to hurt us. The fighting itself brings no pleasure, but the victory, the knowledge that you changed something, that you saved lives, that you defeated something everyone said couldn't be defeated. She nodded slowly. Yeah, we enjoy that part. The war continued for years. Tron remained with the human fleet throughout the war, watching, learning, documenting everything. She saw battles that should have been lost turn into victories thanks to sheer human determination. She saw soldiers perform the impossible simply because they refused to accept defeat. She also saw the cost. Humans didn't hide their dead. They held ceremonies for them, spoke their names, remembered their sacrifices. On every ship was a memorial wall where the faces of fallen crew members were displayed. Officers visited these walls regularly, touching the faces, whispering silent words that Tron couldn't hear. They felt the loss. They carried the grief, but they didn't let it stop them. How do you do it? She asked Admiral Chen one evening. How do you keep fighting, knowing that more of your people will die? Chen was silent for a long time. They were in her private quarters, a small room that showed surprising signs of warmth. Family photos, books with worn covers, a small plant that she watered every day. Because stopping would be worse, she finally said. If we stop fighting, the Vadhkri win, more worlds perish, more species are consumed. The deaths of our people would mean nothing. She looked at one of the photos, which depicted a young man in a naval uniform. My son died in the Battle of Kessler, the first wave. He was 23 years old. Tron didn't know what to say. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. He died defending civilians who had no way to defend themselves. He died so others could live. That is exactly what he would have wanted. Chen turned to Tron, and her eyes shone with unshed tears. We don't fight because we love war. We fight because we love peace, and we know that sometimes peace must be conquered with blood. Tron returned to the Concord a changed being. Her report on human psychology was 3,000 pages long, filled with observations and analyses that challenged everything her species believed about violence. The summary was simple. Humans are not monsters, but guardians. They chose to they lose things they can never get back, but they continue to fight because they are absolutely certain that some things are worth fighting for. The Concord shouldn't fear humanity. The Concord should be grateful that humanity exists. The High Council read her report. They discussed it for days, and slowly their view of humanity began to change. These weren't primitive beings barely held back from savagery. These were beings who had looked at the full spectrum of their own nature, both light and dark, and decided to use their darkness in service of the light. It was something the Concord had never understood. They had tried to eradicate violence from their cultures, believing it to be the path to civilization. Humans took a different path. They kept their violence, trained it, aimed it at what deserved to be destroyed. Now the galaxy was learning that, perhaps, humans had been right all along. 7 years. 7 long, bloody, terrible years. The war against the Vadhkri had gripped the entire galaxy, touching every corner of known space. Worlds that had never known conflict learned what it meant to live in fear. Species that had forgotten the meaning of weapons learned to pray for salvation, and humanity saved them. They fought battle after battle, losing thousands of ships and millions of lives. They pushed the Vadhkri back from the central worlds, then from the mid-rim systems, then from the outer territories. Each victory came at a terrible price. Every step forward was paid for with blood, but they never stopped. They never slowed down. They never asked if the price was too high. Admiral Chen Weilan stood on the viewing deck of the Defiance, watching the stars drift by. She was older now. Her gray hair had turned white. Her face was lined with years of stress and grief. She had lost friends in this war. She had lost family. She had ordered attacks that killed people she knew and loved, but they had won. The final battle had occurred 3 weeks ago in a place humans called the Void Between. It was the space between galaxies. A void so vast that light itself seemed to die there. From here, the Vadhkri had come. Here they had to be stopped. The battle lasted 9 days. Every remaining human warship participated alongside any Concord vessels that could be convinced to join. They faced the main Vadhkri hive, a cluster of bioships so massive that it had its own gravity. Billions of years of consumption, growth, evolution, everything had gathered in one place. It was the largest battle in the history of the galaxy. Ships perished by the hundreds. The void burned with the fire of destroyed vessels. For a while, it seemed that even humanity might not be enough. Then Admiral Chen ordered the deployment of the Sunbreakers. No one outside the human military knew what the Sunbreakers were. The technology had been classified at the highest level, developed in secret during the 300 years of quarantine. It was a weapon designed for one purpose: to close the spatial portal the Vadhkri used to travel between galaxies. Deployment required sacrifice, a squadron of volunteers flying specially modified ships into the heart of the Vadhkri formation. They knew they wouldn't survive, and they went anyway. Commander David Akinel, son of the famous Admiral James Akinel, who had died 2 years earlier in the Battle of the Crimson Reach, led the squadron. His final transmission was recorded and played at every subsequent memorial service. "This is Sunbreaker, Commander. We are on position. Portal coordinates locked. All Sunbreaker units, prepare for deployment." A pause. "It was an honor to serve with you, with all of you. Tell my father I will see him soon." A final pause. "Sunbreaker Commander attacking." The portal collapsed. The spatial rift that had allowed the Vadhkri to enter this galaxy was sealed forever. The remaining hive, cut off from its source of reinforcement and renewal, was destroyed in the hours that followed. The Vadhkri were extinct. After 4 billion years of consuming galaxies, they had finally met what they couldn't defeat: humanity. Now, 3 weeks later, Admiral Chen was heading to the capital world of the Concord to attend a ceremony. The Council wanted to honor humanity's sacrifice. They wanted to thank the species that had saved them all. Chen wasn't sure how she felt about it. Her aide, a young officer named Lieutenant Pak, entered the viewing deck. "Admiral, we are approaching the capital. The Council has sent an official welcome." Pak hesitated. He had served under Chen for 3 years. He knew when something was bothering her. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" Chen didn't answer for a long time. She didn't take her eyes off the stars, watching them drift by like old friends. "I keep thinking about the people we lost," she finally said. "All the ships, all the soldiers, all the pilots who never came home." She turned to look at Pak. "We won, Lieutenant, but I'm not sure I feel like celebrating. The Council wants to give us everything, ma'am. Full membership in the Concord, a seat on the High Council, territories, compensation for the quarantine. They call us saviors." "I know what they call us." Chen's voice was weary. "They call us saviors because they are too afraid to call us what we actually are." "What is that, ma'am?" Chen smiled, but there was no joy in that smile. "Warriors, killers, a species that does the dirty work so everyone else can keep their hands clean." She shook her head. "They locked us in a cage for 300 years because they were afraid of what we might do. Now they want to reward us because we did exactly what they were afraid of." Pak didn't know what to say. He was young enough that the quarantine was just history to him, something that happened before he was born. But Chen remembered. She remembered the anger, the frustration, the knowledge that the galaxy had abandoned them because they were different. "What will you tell them, ma'am?" "The truth," Chen said. "I will tell them the truth." The ceremony was held in the Great Hall of the Concord, the same room where 7 years ago the decision to contact humanity had been made. Representatives of all 1,000 species were present. The room was decorated with banners and light. Music played from hidden speakers. It looked like a celebration. High Counselor Mortex stood at the podium. His crystalline body glowed with pride and relief. He had survived the war barely. He had watched his civilization nearly collapse. Now he watched it celebrate its salvation. "We are gathered here today to honor the species that saved us all," he announced. "Humanity came to us in our darkest hour. They fought battles we couldn't fight. They made sacrifices we couldn't make. They bled and died so we could live." He gestured toward Chen, who stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by her surviving officers. "Admiral Chen Weilin, on behalf of the Galactic Concord, I express our deepest gratitude to you, and I offer humanity everything we have. Full membership in the Concord, a permanent seat on the High Council, and sovereignty over any unclaimed territories you wish to settle. You have earned this and much more." The hall erupted in applause. Beings of all shapes and sizes clapped, stomped, and made whatever sounds indicated approval in their cultures. The noise was immense. Chen waited for the noise to subside. Then she stepped forward. "Thank you, High Counselor. The Concord's gratitude is appreciated." She paused, scanning the room where all the alien faces watched her. "But I must respectfully decline your offer." The silence that followed was absolute. Mortex's eyes flickered with confusion. "Decline? I don't understand." "Humanity does not want membership in the Concord. We do not want a seat on your council. We do not want your territories or your reparations." Chen's voice was calm but firm. "What we want is to be left alone to do what we do best. Protect. But you certainly deserve recognition, a reward. After everything you sacrificed, we sacrificed because it was the right thing to do, not because we expected payment." Chen walked closer to the podium, and her eyes met Mortex's. "You locked us in a cage for 300 years because you were afraid of what we might become. You weren't wrong to be afraid, but you were wrong about the reasons." She turned to address the whole hall. "You were afraid we would conquer you, enslave you, do to you what the Vadhkri did. That was never our intention. We build weapons because we know better than any living species how quickly a world can collapse. We train for war because we have seen what happens to those who don't. We prepare for the worst because we have survived the worst over and over again throughout our history." She activated the holographic display behind her. It showed Earth, blue, green, and white, small and fragile against the darkness of space. "This is our home. One world orbiting one star in one small corner of the galaxy. Everything we are came from this tiny point. And from this tiny point, we spread throughout our solar system, then through the stars, always striving, always evolving, always surviving." The display changed, showing images of war, ships in combat, soldiers fighting, memorial walls covered in the faces of the dead. "We lost millions in this war. Millions of our sons and daughters, our mothers and fathers, our friends and lovers. We felt every death. We mourned every loss. But we kept fighting because we knew, if we stopped, you would all die." Chen's voice rose. "We don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to protect it not because you deserve it, honestly. Many of you don't. But because it is the right thing to do. Because someone has to stand before the darkness and say, 'No further.' And if that someone has to be us." She smiled, and it wasn't a gentle expression. "Well, we've had a lot of practice." The hall was silent. Chen let the silence drag on, then continued. "This is what humanity offers. No seat on the council, no political power, no territory beyond our initial system. In return, we will serve as the galaxy's shield, independent, uncompromising, forever vigilant." She met Mortex's gaze again. "The Vadhkri were not the only danger in the universe. They were only the first to find you. There are things out there in the darkness that make the Vadhkri look like children. Humanity knows this because we spent 300 years listening, watching, preparing. We know what is coming. And when it happens, we will be ready." Mortex was silent for a long time, then nodded slowly. "The Concord accepts humanity's terms. You will be our shield, and we will support you in any way you require." Chen nodded in return. "Then we have an agreement." The ceremony continued, but the tone had changed. It was no longer a celebration. It was something else. A recognition that the universe was dangerous, and that someone had to stand between the danger and the innocent. Humanity accepted that role willingly. In the months that followed, the galaxy settled into a restless peace. The Vadhkri were gone, but the scars of their invasion remained. Worlds needed rebuilding. Refugees needed homes. The Concord had work to do. Humanity returned to training. They expanded their shipyards. They improved their weapons. They trained new soldiers to replace those they had lost. They watched the edges of known space with sensors capable of detecting threats light years away. And in the deepest voids, in the spaces between galaxies where things more ancient and darker than the Vadhkri stirred, in an infinite hunger, something ancient realized what had happened. The Vadhkri were its children, not the only children, but the beloved ones. It had sent them to consume, to grow, to prepare the path for its own arrival. They had never failed before. Now they were gone. Destroyed by something small, something insignificant, something that shouldn't have been able to resist. The ancient being stretched its vast consciousness, touching the edges of the galaxy where its children had perished. It sensed the remnants of the battle, the echoes of violence, strange energy signatures of weapons that shouldn't have existed. It asked its remaining servants what had happened. "Humans," they whispered in reply. "There are humans in the galaxy now." The ancient being considered this. It had consumed countless galaxies over billions of years. It had faced resistance before, brief flashes of disobedience that were always suppressed. Nothing had ever truly threatened it, but the Vadhkri were gone completely. And those who had killed them were still there, watching, waiting, preparing for the next battle. For the first time in eternity, the darkness wavered. On the bridge of the repaired Thermopylae, the new Admiral James Aconell Jr. looked at the tactical display. His sensors had detected something on the edge of known space, something large, something that made his instincts scream with danger. He smiled. "All hands to battle stations," he ordered. "Looks like we have work to do." Around him, the crew moved with the smooth efficiency of people who had spent their entire lives training for this moment. Weapons were powered up, shields activated, fighters prepared for launch. Across the human fleet, the same preparations were happening. Ships that had barely finished repairs were ready to fight again. Soldiers who had just returned from leave grabbed their weapons and reported for duty. Pilots ran to their fighters without an order. The galaxy watched in awe. They had seen humans fight the Vadhkri, but they had assumed it was a one-time event, a desperate response to a desperate threat. Of course, now that the crisis had passed, humans would relax, rest, become peaceful like everyone else. They didn't understand. They still didn't understand. Humans didn't fight because of the Vadhkri. They fought because fighting was their essence. It was in their blood, in their bones, in their very souls. They had spent 10,000 years learning to destroy anything that threatened them. They hoped never to use those skills, but they never stopped training. Admiral Chen, now retired, watched the mobilization of the fleet from her home on Earth. She sat in a chair by the window, looking at the night sky where human ships gathered like stars preparing for battle. Her granddaughter, a young woman just accepted into the Naval Academy, sat beside her. "Grandmother," the girl asked, "are you afraid?" Chen pondered the question. She remembered all the battles she had participated in, all the friends she had lost, all the terrible things she had seen and done in the name of protecting her people. "No," she finally said, "I'm not afraid." "Why not?" Chen reached out and took her granddaughter's hand. "Because I know who we are. I know what we can do. Darkness is coming, child. It always comes. But we are humanity. We were born in fire. We grew up in conflict. We were forged by 10,000 years of war against ourselves and everything that tried to destroy us." She smiled, and in that smile was everything humanity had ever been: violence and love, fear and courage, darkness and light. Whatever is out there, whatever is coming after us, we will meet it together. We will fight it together, and we will win together. She looked at the sky again, where the fleet was now moving toward an unknown threat. We are humanity, and we are very, very good at violence. The ships jumped to faster-than-light speed, disappearing from view. Across the galaxy, species that had never known peace because of the Vadhkri began their first night of peaceful sleep. They didn't know what was coming. They didn't know what waited in the darkness between galaxies. They didn't know the universe was full of beings that wanted to consume them, destroy them, erase them from existence. But they knew one thing: humanity was watching over them. And as long as humans existed, nothing would touch them. The darkness continued to waver. In the vast reaches of the cosmos, in the spaces between the stars where light never reached, the ancient being watched the human fleet. It watched as their ships moved with purpose and precision. It saw their weapons, their shields, their endless preparations for war. It made a decision. Not yet, it thought. Not this galaxy, not these beings. For the first time in billions of years, the darkness turned away and went to seek easier prey. Behind it, humanity continued to watch, continued to prepare, continued to stand guard over the galaxy that had once feared them and now depended on them. Some species were destined to be farmers, some artists, some scientists. Humanity was destined to be warriors, and they had finally found a cause worthy of their talents. The galaxy was safe not because the danger had disappeared, but because it was protected by something more dangerous, and that was enough, for now.